And you know what Micah said? The podcast was recorded on the day off. And to that, I would say, Micah, you're fucking right. I wonder what Malik Hooker's doing on his day off. You know, people are taking their dogs to get groomed, going to the movies, spending all day with a headset playing Xbox. Like, what you do with your free time is what you do with your free time. Just because you're able to identify that Mike is doing something other than football by way of his podcast doesn't mean that everybody else on that roster is not doing the same thing. And I would say his podcast is football centric. His mind's on the game all week. People wanted me to talk about was the Dallas situation. And I'm like, which one? Fucking Dallas. Dallas, to me, and Dallas fans will say I'm some Eagles homer and I don't like Dallas. I promise you, I don't hate Dallas. I was in Philly for 2 years. Okay. I don't like Wawa just because they like Wawa. I'm a Sheetz guy. You know, for 2 years, I put the I hate Dallas cap on. Yeah, I had to do that. But I hated everybody I played, all the same. I don't hate Dallas. I was a Dallas Cowboys fan when I was a little kid. Does everybody know that? I had to explain that to somebody this weekend. So they were asking me, did I grow up a Panthers fan, which I was a Panthers fan for much of my adolescent years. And even before that, I was a Cowboys fan, though, in the beginning, okay? I was a typical front-running suburban white kid, okay? And what happened was they started doing a bunch of cocaine. And they started buying houses that they could solicit prostitutes in and probably doing cocaine off of their backs and their butts and just like doing cocaine off all types of things, like all types of surfaces. They're doing the cocaine off those surfaces. I'm 9 years old. I'm like, I don't need my team acting this way. Like, I don't, like when you're a kid and they're like, hey, your favorite team, by the way, this is what sex is. They're doing sex to a bunch of women that they have to pay in a house. And they're doing a bunch of drugs. Like, I was like, I'm good on the Cowboys. So at one point I was a big Cowboys fan. My mom took me to a game when I was like 8 years old. I got to play at that old stadium with the hole in the roof and shit. They played the 49ers. It was incredible. We had a little dinner date. It was like the coolest trip ever. Thanks, Mom. And then a couple years later, I had to change teams. I was a Panthers fan. So I don't hate the Cowboys, but I will tell you this. This is as combustible a situation as there is in the NFL right now. And if you were a Cowboy, you'd say, I'm sure you're creating noise. You're making problems where they're not problems. But every time I open up my laptop or scroll down my phone, I see something to the effect of CeeDee Lamb is not going to practice in camp unless he gets a new deal. He wants $32 million a year, and that seems pretty fucking reasonable, but it hasn't happened. And I don't know if Dallas, with having not paid Dak, they're waiting until July. The NFL's like, hey, just wait because it's going to get pretty sparse in July, news cycle-wise. Let's just drop the developments then. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're going to hit the reset button. I have wondered aloud if they're hitting the reset button. Even with Jerry's age, like the moves they're making. Look at their roster. Look at the offense. I saw one of these 33rd team graphics this week. They're going around and doing the best players at every position in each. They built an all NFC East team offensively. It's all green. Okay, like in the past, Dallas had a lot of talent, haven't been able to get over the hump. Now they don't have that talent. And if CeeDee Lamb's not practicing, if CeeDee Lamb's not playing, like they're walking Dak into a shredder, right? It might be a lame duck year for him. It might be a lame duck year for Mike McCarthy. They might be talking about trading Micah Parsons, although I wouldn't, But there's a lot of stuff that could be on the table in Dallas that we just don't know about. I look at Jerry Jones and I wonder if he's like, hey, we're going to fucking hit the reset button for real this time. Like as crazy as it might sound, because I would pay CD, but maybe they're like, hey, we'll go grab some picks for this guy, start the clock on a new regime, have Dak play out this lame duck season, and go forward. And next year, hire Bill Belichick, who Jerry Jones has been quoted as saying, what was the quote? I could paraphrase and say that Jerry likes him. Jerry, I know him personally, and I like him. There's no doubt in my mind we could work together. None. And you know when Jerry puts the none at the end, that means he's thinking about it, in my opinion. And wouldn't it be interesting if all these tea leaves I'm reading point to Dallas hitting a reset button, which would be just like insane. The one thing we've had to bank on every year is it is fun when Dallas isn't trying to win. It's really fun every year when they're trying to win and Stephen A. Smith puts on his cowboy hat and it's the first thing everybody's talking about. But like, can they really milk it out of a team that's like tanking? I don't know. We might find out. That would be unprecedented. I suppose you'd have to go back to the Quincy Carter days where it was like they were really in purgatory post 90s run. This would be something in the modern era with the way the TV people depend on this fucking franchise being relevant. If they crater this year, oh my goodness, you won't be able to look away. Now, what I was prompted to talk about, I believe, is the Micah Parsons issue. Micah Parsons has a podcast, okay? And Malik Hooker, not of the White House, Malik Hooker is upset. Well, didn't appear upset, but was asked on an interview, you know, if he had any advice for Micah Parsons. I think that was the question. And I'm paraphrasing here. Malik Hooker's like, yeah, I would like pull him aside and say to focus more on football and not the podcast, right? That's kind of what he said. And Micah, predictably, has a public response for a public statement. And he's like, hey, man, not only do you share a locker room with me, we have like 2 phones and they're connected. And you have what's called a contact. And I'm Micah Parsons. So just hit M under contacts and fucking call me, bro. Like that's a perfectly reasonable response. And to the contention that a podcast is getting in the way of Dallas's success, just looking outside looking in, I don't think that's the case. I don't think Micah Parsons' podcast lost you that Green Bay game. I don't think Micah Parsons' podcast got the ball run up your ass when Buffalo thumped you week whatever it was, and I won like 10 grand. I don't think Micah Parsons is the problem in Dallas. If you want to make Micah Parsons the problem in Dallas, don't make it about the podcast, okay? If there's something, and there could well be something internally going on interpersonally between teammates or factions of teammates, because this is the way this stuff goes, the issue could be interpersonal and the podcast is just an extension of it. Because I don't think the podcast is creating any sort of distraction. And if players are saying they're distracted by a podcast, weren't we the ones that when people were demonstrating for various causes, right? And I'm one of those people that was like, hey, distraction. It doesn't distract us that Malcolm Jenkins has his fist up in the air. It didn't distract anybody, you know, that Colin Kaepernick had took a knee. I mean, you could argue on either side of that, but I would guess that, and I don't mean to be elitist, but nobody in the comments played in an NFL locker room and could tell me honestly if they were distracted by that or not, or would they be distracted? So you don't know. And I don't mean this condescendingly, but I would tell you that the last thing I think most people are thinking about on a week-to-week basis in a locker room is somebody's fucking podcast, bro. Unless that podcast is being used to disrespect people on the team, divide people on the team, throw coaches under the bus, that sort of thing. I just haven't seen Micah's podcast do that. And I might be missing some things, okay? If you're a Dallas fan, you give me a bunch of examples of where his podcast, and do this exactly if you're going to do it in the comments. Find me where he's disrespected his teammates, his team, created a distraction that way. If you don't like his content, that's one thing, okay? Listen, I'm a person that looks at, in today's day and age, everybody's got a fucking podcast, hand up. A lot of them are active players. A lot of them aren't as good as Micah Parsons, okay? But that's kind of irrelevant because to me, as a consumer of media now and as a former player, I don't think anybody actually having a podcast, you know how somebody having an autobiography can bother me? Like, I'll be like, there's no fucking way that guy meets the criteria where you should have an autobiography, right? Like, there's a Mendoza line for that. It's getting out of control. Anybody has a book now. I got approached about a book in my DMs like 5 days ago. I'm like, you didn't hear my rant on this? I'm nowhere close to important enough to have a book, but anybody can have a podcast. Okay. And you know what Micah said? The podcast was recorded on the day off. And to that, I would say, Micah, you're fucking right. I wonder what Malik Hooker's doing on his day off. You know, people are taking their dogs to get groomed, going to the movies, spending all day with a headset playing Xbox. Like, what you do with your free time is what you do with your free time. Just because you're able to identify that Micah is doing something other than football by way of his podcast doesn't mean that everybody else on that roster is not doing the same thing. And I would say his podcast is football centric. His mind's on the game all week. You know, give the guy a fucking, a break here. If he's a problem in the locker room, that'll come out. But it's not about the podcast. The podcast would be an extension of whatever problem that is. And to anybody saying that his podcast is a distraction, I would say, like, I would caution you. You got to know what it's like in an NFL locker room. There's 53 guys living 53 lives. There's 53 variations of being plugged in online. There's 53 different lockers, and they're all getting different amounts of reporters and that sort of thing. Do you know how many big stories hover around Dallas in a given year? Like, the podcast is pretty low on the totem pole. If you don't like his content, come on. The sumo wrestling thing was fucking incredible. Come on. Him and CJ Stroud, their chemistry is incredible. The batting average bit, I hope it's a bit, Micah. That was incredible, okay? But I heard a Dallas fan say this to me the other day. They were like, well, he typed it because I took issue with this online. Number one, Malik Hooker should be going to him. That's how we handle problems, okay? That's how we handle stuff. Anything handled outside, whether it's I respect him for being a named source, right? Like, at least he's saying it. And maybe in his mind, he's like, there's nothing I would say here that I wouldn't say to Micah. Got to go there first. He shouldn't hear online. Second thing is, Cowboys fans said this to me. I just prefer hearing Cowboys voices who have playoff experience. And I would just like to tell you this. I just got a ticker alert. Cowboys have shut down open locker room for the entirety of the 2024 season. Because nobody has playoff experience on that fucking team, dude. Nobody. So you want them all to be mute? You know? Like, should they sign somebody with a couple rings and he could handle all the media engagements? I would ask that person who has an issue with Micah Parsons' podcast on account of him not spending time at the facility or pouring anything into something other than football directly. I would ask that person how many Dallas Cowboys that they follow on their social media. If you only want to hear from playoff voices, or if Micah's not good enough to use his voice, then who is? And yeah, does he say some things sometimes where you're like, he could use a little media training? Like, I don't know what he meant by the Mike Zimmer thing. And maybe case in point here. This is a bit of a distraction, okay? So actually, nobody's immune in Dallas. They asked him about Mike Zimmer. And I think Micah just says exactly what every other player thinks. Not every other player, because every player is different. But I think there's a lot of great players that bite their tongue, and then like Micah is like a kid where he just says what he wants to say. And I think that's kind of an endearing thing. But then sometimes I'll ask him about Mike Zimmer, and he's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting him. You know, like, pull that quote up. But he's basically like, I'm looking forward to meeting him. I hear there's some things that he likes to do that are different than things that I like to do. And, that's not going to fly. But he's a great coach, and he's coached a lot of great players. But, some things just aren't going to fly, And I'm paraphrasing again. I can read you the exact quote. But these are all things that are distractions, right? I don't know if he said this on his podcast or not. Here's the quote. Honestly, me and Zim have probably said a total of 20 words to each other. He's a very quiet person. All I keep hearing from the coaches is Zim likes it this way. I was like, well, I like it this way. So I can't wait to have my true sit down with him. I think it'll be pretty cool because obviously old school mindset, old school mentality. I think he's had a lot of great players, but he ain't never had a Micah before. It will be fun, and I think it's going to be unique. There's a lot of similarities on things, how he uses me to how Dan would use me in the system, but he has had more twists and turns of how he's going to get things set up. Also, there's some things that I've got to get used to too. It's going to be a compromisable relationship. There's going to be things like, yeah, I'm not going to give on. I don't give on. That's part of the regime, you know? Which I got a little confusing at the end there. What regime? What does that mean? But I think more than anything, what he's saying is like there's a scheme change, and I expect to be built around. And to that, I would say
they should.
There's nothing he's saying like in basketball. If this quote came out, everybody would be like, yeah, it's just basketball. There are a few stars in the NFL that can kind of. You'd be a fool not to ask Micah Parsons how he wants to be used. Like if I was a defensive coordinator, I'd walk in and I'd say, what do you feel like you do the best? And where are the areas of your game that you feel like are wasting your time and the defense's time? And then I'd evaluate. But the point is, Micah just likes to speak his mind, okay? I don't know where he said this, but chances are he didn't even say it on the fucking podcast. So unless you're going to take away the microphone from Micah Parsons at every turn in the road, he's just going to say what the fuck he feels. And the minute he stops playing well, and you know what? Somebody said playoff voices. Hey, 1 sack in 4 playoff games. Okay, I can't remember the other 3. I'd have to go back and break the film down. But that Green Bay game, one of the main things we talked about coming out of that game was how few true one-on-ones Micah Parsons was given. The whole game plan revolves around Micah Parsons. So when you tell me, I'm looking at his sack numbers, would you rather have Micah Parsons in the playoffs or your best rusher on your favorite team? If you're a Dallas fan, would you rather have Micah Parsons in the playoffs or whoever it is that you're watching on TV falling into a couple sacks in the playoffs? Like, this guy is a ball player. And I guess my big point is, like, the podcast is not the problem. If there's something going on in Dallas, it's not the fact that this guy has a podcast. It's entirely possible that people don't like him. It's entirely possible that Malik Hooker doesn't like him. It's entirely possible that he don't like Malik Hooker. It's entirely possible that the whole fucking locker room hates each other. But we don't know that, and I can't speculate. What I can speculate on is how much of a distraction a podcast is. And it's just not. If you're a professional, you know what's more distracting, Malik Hooker? Having to cover for like 6 seconds because nobody can get home. Like, that is distracting as fuck. Can I tell you about how that is? Like, you got Micah Parsons, you got Tank Lawrence, you got guys like that. Those dogs will hunt. And so Micah could get on the podcast and say whatever he wants, short of disrespecting me, my teammates, and dividing the team or throwing coaches under the bus. Anyways, before we get to Boye Mafe, I have a couple mailbags. Who will you be using as your dynasty team in NCAA 25? Well, I feel like I probably have track marks on my arm. I'm so addicted to fucking Madden, dude.
You've been putting up some good results.
The chances of me getting off Madden right now are pretty low. But when this game comes out, I will dabble. Here's what I'd like to do. I would like to take over the Iowa football program, spread it out, recruit a bunch of kids from California. Players can coach up to 30 seasons in this game. I'm really curious what the divorce rate is on people that play 30 fucking seasons of Dynasty. Also found out that you can't export you can't export your draft class to Madden, you fucking nerds. Who does that? A lot of people probably do that.
I would do it.
You fucking nerd. I'm just jealous. I'm jealous that you have the time and the organizational skills to do that. You do it with a flash drive or something?
No.
Export fake players to another platform to make them fake on another platform?
Yeah. I don't know. I used to do it with my NBA dynasties with the college basketball at the same time.
You're like, fuck, dude. I didn't know that was weird. Maybe it's not. You get to make decisions like when do you have your recruits in, which is really interesting. I would schedule Colorado and have them in that week. I was looking at the ACC Dynasty Challenge that I could do. I was like, wouldn't it be fun if I found a player that I used to play against in the ACC and we all agreed to take over dynasties in the ACC? But then I got on the ACC website and it looks like a fucking March Madness bracket. There's so many teams. There's so many goddamn teams. I don't even know, like, fuck that idea. So that's one mailbag question. The next is from Diana Rossini. She gets intimidated when she goes into Home Depot. This resonated with a lot of people online. I'm sure there were some very interesting answers. She said she gets intimidated when she goes to Home Depot. What is the man's version of that? A hospital, like when a baby is being born, like when your baby is being born, they talk to you like a fucking second class citizen, dude. They talk to you. I'm trying to put this in a way that's not problematic. They talk to me like I'm touched in there. Like, and they also talk to you like you are the enemy of the baby and the wife. Like you could fuck this process at any time. So what I need you to do is like sit in the corner, but then help all the time, but don't help the wrong way because we'll make you feel really small and stupid and masculine. I think hospitals are one. Another one is Home Depot.
Oh, because you feel like you have to be the man in there.
Yes, dude. That's the issue. A woman going into Home Depot, you've got this fucking force field around you. Like,
ask for help.
If you're okay with being mansplained things, because that's like a mansplain capital of the world, and I couldn't find a Home Depot employee that wouldn't jump at the opportunity to help some young lady find the 2x4s. But when you're a man, you feel like you're on fucking trial in there, dude. Don't you know? Like, I've spent half my life not asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. You can't ask a follow-up question in Home Depot.
I don't know if you know this, but Reed, you know this, but as a man, I've spent a lot of times evading asking an obvious question. Like, I'll walk around Home Depot 3 laps looking for some, and if I feel like it's dumb enough and it might be embarrassing enough, I might just walk outside and order it online. Okay? So I'm just telling you, going in to get spray paint a couple weeks ago, I felt like a fucking moron. You're not alone, women, if you don't like going in Home Depot. I love going in Home Depot, but when it comes to asking questions, it's gonna be tough sledding for your boy. Some people said like Sephora or like Bath and Body Works, those types of places. No, I'm fine there because like you assume I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not so easy being a man. You got to have answers, right?
Target's one too, because you just have a mental clock. Like, when are we leaving? When are we leaving? And it's always later.
Dude, I don't know. Target is kind of fun, dude.
You like Target?
Target's the new Walmart.
Target's just takes so long.
Nah, man. You think Target takes a long time too? I haven't been to Target in a while.
Your girlfriend, yeah.
I did take. If you go there with your girlfriend, yeah. I have heard a lot about the what's that place where they have everything? They have Kirkland brand stuff. Costco. I've heard some things about Costco. I can't wait to get in one of those Costcos.
Have you never been?
Not honestly.
You should go to Costco and get a 128-ounce bag of potato chips.
When you ask people what's in there,
literally
it's all types
everything.
of things.
Literally everything.
Like, they can't even describe what's in there.
Yeah.
They're like, you just got to go to see it to believe it.
It's too much for me. My mom goes with my girlfriend instead.
When I went to that Buc-ee's store on the way, we went to Buc-ee's, which I had no idea existed. That place is too much. Okay?
That was a lot. I told you guys before we walked in, I was like, it's overwhelming. You walk in, it's overwhelming. And that was the look on your faces when we walked in, overwhelmed.
All right. So somebody asked me to talk about the Stafford disrespect, because I've been tweeting about the Stafford disrespect. I saw something called Start Bench Cut, and it had Goff, Stafford, and Cousins. So I have this idea. It's a lot cheaper. I don't know what corporations have to spend on drug tests, but I would just email prospective employees and be like, Start Bench Cut, Stafford, Goff, and Cousins. And this is my problem with these start bench cut things. I think this is going to start a world war one day. They're going to do a start bench cut with like North Korea, Russia, and like, I don't know, Ukraine. And based on the answers, people are going to feel real disrespected. You're going to be like, well, obviously, well, maybe do you bench Ukraine? Do you bench Russia? Like, if you bench, what's the question? I mean, they're all big, scary countries that can do real damage. What are we, disrespecting Ukraine? You saw what they just did to Russia. You know what I mean? And some people would say it was a home game, but like, it's still an impressive show of force. So what am I going to cut Ukraine? It's going to start a world war. Okay, these start, bench, cut things are out of control. There's an inherent level of disrespect that comes about when you put these out on the internet, and I think these fucking aggregators know that. So in no way am I disrespecting Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, okay? And I would order it that way. I'd be benching, I'd be giving the silver fucking medal to Jared Goff. I'd be giving the bronze medal to Kirk Cousins. The gold medal by a solid margin is Matt Stafford. I'm not demeaning Jared Goff because Jared Goff's a top 10 quarterback. His production says it. He's plenty good for Detroit. That's what Dan Campbell said. Is he great off his spot? Not all the time. Is he great outside in inclement weather? Not all the time. But is he a guy you can win with? Fuck yeah. I love Jared Goff. My nightmare is Jared Goff seeing me quote tweet that with such anger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he'd get the wrong idea. There's nothing I have against Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, who I think is underrated. I think people have underrated, not underpaid, but underrated Kirk Cousins. Matt Stafford, I said this earlier today, is a Hall of Famer. And I don't mean that like, is he going to get in or not? Is he Hall of Fame good? Yeah, he's Hall of Fame good to me. You heard CJ Stroud talk about him. CJ Stroud, watch that video with CJ Stroud and Gilly. And he's ranting and raving about Matt Stafford. He's talking about if he were in Green Bay with Aaron's setup, he'd have multiple rings right now. And Gilly said, yeah, he'd have one or two. And he said, no, maybe 3 or 4. And I'm one of those people in that camp that believes that. Matt Stafford is an interesting case study on context because you had the denial of organizational structure for so long, right? And you could say, but he had Megatron. They didn't have a fucking 100-yard rusher. I mean, before it was Hank Fraley and the big hogs there and the 2 backs and Dan Campbell and the gritty group they have now, they couldn't find a 100-yard rusher. And that organization was just, I mean, it's night and day. And then you give him the context and Sean McVay and LA and a real shot, and he goes and wins a ring. And I don't know that I've seen a guy sling the ball like him at that age last year in some time. I mean, Brady at a high level, Rodgers, but there's not a lot of guys in their late 30s throwing the ball like he's throwing the ball right now, going into the playoffs last year. So I just wanted to say that. How many times can I'm not supposed to say this, beat this dead horse? Okay? As long as you guys watch the Kentucky Derby, I can say that. How many times can I beat the dead horse here? Matt Stafford is better than people think he is in the general public, as evidenced by Gilly's reaction. Anybody you talk to about Stafford, they always want to give him his due, but they're like, yeah, but... And then when you talk to players, Matt Stafford's in that class of players. And I was talking to Bomani Jones about this earlier, so I want to give him credit. But he's in that class of players that it seems like players respect more than fans. And I don't know what the prerequisite for that is, but he hits it. It's just something about him. Maybe it's what he's been through and players knowing how hard that is, or the throws he makes, how rare those throws are, or how tough he is. But that motherfucker can sling it with the best of them now.
Yeah, he's got a good chance to go over 60,000 career passing yards this season.
Yep. And thank God he got that Super Bowl, because people would still be hanging that but over his head. And now the goalposts moved a little bit where it's like, well, but what did he do in Detroit all those years? Well, you said you'd give him a better look when he got, a team around him, and he did, and he won the whole thing. And last year, that fucking playoff game was so physical and so high stakes and just so, I mean, it was beautiful. I was watching a video last night of a pigeon running down on kickoff with the Oakland Raiders at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss football so damn much right now. Okay. I can't bet another stupid basketball thing or hockey thing or baseball thing. I want to take all of the money in my account and put it on fucking Tennessee when they play Chicago week 1 or week 2, whenever that is. Like, I can't wait. Give me on a future. We've got Boye Mafe, young pass rusher for the Seattle Seahawks. Had a breakout year last year. As a little context going in, I said this to him before he got on. My football guy, Nolan, had texted me ahead of the pod. He's like, man, what's really interesting is y'all's measurables were like the same. Same arm length to 1/8 of an inch on the arm. Same 10-yard split, which was very quick. He's a quick guy. He reminds me of Frank Clark. And when I played, Frank reminded me of a younger me. And I had heard that before. And so I look at this kid and I'm like, man, this is fucking cool. I'm watching this guy who's got a lot of the same tools I had, and he's going to be so much better because he seems to understand the game year 2. Like, talking to this dude, he's like a coach on the field. And I think Seattle's got a really fun core defensively. This guy really understands pass rush. I had a lot of fun talking to him about it. Hopefully you don't get tired of these D-line 201 conversations, but really love having the pass rushers on, and this kid can play. Boye Mafe, Seattle Seahawks. Check this out. We'll be back Friday with a special episode. Don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be something, and it's not going to be recorded July 4th. It's going to be recorded like ASAP so I can get on the road. Now, I will say this. I'm leaving. I'm headed to Montana. I will be there for much of the remainder of the summer. I will be there crunching away at my 2024, 2025 NFL notes. I'll be getting prepped, learning the rosters inside and out, learning the scheme changes, learning everything I can learn, because when I get back in August, it's going to be time to make some fucking hay. We're gonna attack this fall, and we're gonna give you guys some of the best football content out there. But I need this break. I need it more than you know. My passion for doing this job has gone up and down this summer. It's not like a code red thing, but I think I'm a little bit burnt out. I don't like taking breaks, but I'm going to take a 2-week break. So you guys are going to hear from Macon. You're going to hear from Beau. You're going to be hearing from, maybe Nate's going to be popping in. I don't know, man. That's why we have the people we have here to pick up the slack when I've hit a wall. So enjoy those guys the next couple weeks. Enjoy Boye Mafe. And I will be back 2 Tuesdays from next week. Anyways, if I have to hop on and give you my 2 cents on something, I will. Check our YouTube. Our YouTube is where you can find shorts and little kind of one-hitter takes that I may or may not give while I'm up in Montana. So head on over to Greenlight's YouTube. If you're just an audio guy or gal, check us out. I will be taking a 2-week break. Here's Boye Mafe.